Last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping said in a closed-door meeting that China would never embrace the judicial independence in the West. This is why people in Hong Kong are trying hard to reject the extradition bill because we do not believe in a country who looks down on human rights. We want to protect our legal system as the last barrier against Beijing's political interference. Apart from asking for the withdrawal of the bill, Hong Kong people also demand for an investigation into police brutality to save Hong Kong from turning into a police state. More importantly, we demand for the universal suffrage. We deeply believe that without any structural political reform and a government chosen by the people, there is no possibility for Hong Kong to restore prosperity. We cannot have a society compromising the interests of individuals. The voice of these people should always be heard. Unfortunately, our government ignores our demands by saying that we have no stake in the society. Our student union members are detained, followed, beaten, and threatened. During the detainment, one of our student union members were told by the police that it was reasonable for them to rape some female protester when they frequently worked overtime. People who side with Beijing are now advocating to install surveillance cameras inside the classroom to monitor teachers and students who dare to support class strike and support the movement. This is the right terror created by the Beijing government, which should be alerted by all people here. Nowadays, students and Hong Kong people are even ready to die for Hong Kong, and some already did. They believe that the only limit to their freedom is their death. This is the ultimate sacrifice for the motherland, and we must not forget them. Many students face strong objection from their family. Some of them are even forced to leave home. But they still choose to head to the front line carrying a letter with their last will. They are determined. They understand that the price of freedom is high. It always has been. But it is a price they are willing to pay, and it is a path of liberation they are willing to choose. We do not fight for freedom out of passion. Passion will burn out. We fight for freedom from a sense of duty and dignity. Teachers, students, civil servants, businessmen are all facing political purge in Hong Kong. This new form of imperialism of China poses a severe threat to Hong Kong. This is a clash of values and system. We need to contain the Communist Party of China. One country, two systems will expire in 2047. US government should help Hong Kong people have the right to decide our future. Therefore, we urge the US Congress to pass the Human Rights and Democracy Act. US must send a strong signal that this special status should be cancelled if Hong Kong lost its autonomy in order to put pressure on China. Hong Kong people will take every step with the last inch of our effort to fight for democracy and freedom. As Thomas Jefferson once said that he would be forever against any form of tyranny. And I believe this is the time for Americans to stand with Hong Kong. 光復香港，時代革命。Thank you.
Sadly, it has become a daily occurrence to see youngsters being pinned to the ground with head concussions, if not being knocked unconscious. On the other hand, riot police and plainclothes officers have since early on deliberately hidden their ID numbers and warrant cards, making it impossible for us to even certify their legitimacy, let alone hold them accountable. On August 21st, police from the Special Tactical Unit charged into Prince Edward MTR station, beating up passengers randomly. They then shut down the station for 24 hours, refusing medical care for those who were injured, raising even suspicions of possible deaths in the station. Separately now, they will be charging in secondary school yards, shopping malls, and buses where young people merely dressed in black can be searched or even arrested without justification. In other words, merely being young is a crime in the police state of Hong Kong. Hong Kong represents something unique in the world. We have long held dear our rule of law, transparent institutions, and the freedom of expression. However, this system is now under great threat. Companies like Hong Kong's major airline Cathay Pacific has succumbed to political pressure, firing dozens of employees due to their political stance. The business community is coerced into making political decisions. As a singer and activist from Hong Kong, I have experienced the suppression firsthand. Ever since the umbrella movement in 2014, I have been blacklisted by the communist government. My songs and my name are censored on Chinese internet. Pressured by the Chinese government, sponsors have pulled out, even international brands have kept their distances. For the past 5 years, and even more so recently, China tried to smear and silence me with their propaganda machines, spreading false claims. Right now, I am facing threats from pro-Beijing supporters and could face arrest and prosecution at any time. The freedom Americans enjoy is something that the people of Hong Kong have long hoped for. Even though our languages and cultures differ, what we have in common is the pursuit for justice, freedom, and democracy. If Hong Kong falls, it would easily become the springboard for the totalitarian regime of China to push its rules and priorities overseas, utilizing its economic powers to conform others to their communist values, just as they have done with Hong Kong in the past 22 years. The US and its allies have everything to fear if they wish to maintain a world that is free, open, and civil. I therefore urge the US Congress to stand by Hong Kong, and most of all, to pass the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act.
Today, we are approaching dangerously close to one country, one system. The present state of affairs reflects Beijing's inability to understand, let alone govern, a free society. The ongoing demonstration began on June 9th, when 1 million Hong Kongers took to the street in protest of proposed legislation that would have allowed criminal suspects to be extradited from Hong Kong to China, where there are no guarantees of the rule of law. Still, before the night have ended, Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced the bill's reading would assume and resume in 3 days. Hong Kongers were preparing for the last flight on June 12th. And then the unthinkable happened. Knowing that Beijing controlled enough votes in the Legislative Council, protesters surrounded the complex earlier in the morning, successfully preventing lawmakers from convening. Lam suspended the bill on June 15, but fell short of fully withdrawing it. A historical 2 million people demonstrate the following day, equivalent to 1 in 4 out of our entire population. I'm not aware of anything comparable to this level of discontent against a government in modern history. I was released exactly 3 months ago, on June 17, and have since joined fellow Hong Kongers to protest in the most creative ways possible. In addition to the bill withdrawn, we demand Lam to retract label on us as rioters, drop all political charges, and conduct an independent investigation into police brutality. Some of us crowdfunded for newspaper advertisement ahead of the G20 summit in late June, calling for the world not to legalize Hong Kong. Others entered the Chamber of Legislative Council complex on July 1st. The same day, another 500,000 Hong Kongers protest peacefully. Crowds continue to show up in large number in the past 15 weekends, with small rallies taking place almost daily across the territories. But the government would not listen. Instead of diffusing the political crisis, it dramatically empowered the riot police. The movement reached a turning point on 21 of July. That night, pro-Beijing thugs with suspect ties to organized crime gathered in the Yunnan train station and indiscriminately attacked not just protesters returning home, reporters on the scene, but even passers-by. The police refused to show up despite repeated emergency calls, plunging Hong Kong into a police state with more violence. On August 5th alone, the day Hong Kongers participated in a general strike, riot police shot 800 canisters of tear gas to disperse the peaceful mass. Compare that to only 87 fires in the entire umbrella movement 5 years ago. The police's excessive force today is clear. Their excessive use of pepper spray, pepper balls, rubber bullets, beanbag rounds, and water cannons almost all of which are imported from Western democracy, are no less troubling. In light of this, I applaud Chairman McGavin and Congressman Smith for introducing the Protect Hong Kong Act last week. Americans' company must not profit from the violent crackdown of freedom-loving Hong Kongers. Co-Chairman Rubio is also right for recently writing that Hong Kong's special status under American law depends on the city being treated as a separate customs area. Beijing should not have it both ways, reaping all the economic benefit of Hong Kong's standing in the world, while erosion of our freedom. This is the most important reason why the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act enjoys the broad support of Hong Kong civil society. Lam finally withdrew the bill earlier this month, but just as protesters have long stopped calling for her resignation, this decision was almost meaningless by now. The movement is far from over because it has long moved beyond one bill or one person. Our most important demand is genuine structural change in Hong Kong, which means free election. Our government's lack of representation lies at the heart of the matter. As I speak, Hong Kong is standing at a critical juncture. The stakes have never been higher. We are confronted by the huge Chinese military build-up just across the border in Shenzhen. President Xi Jinping is unlikely to take hardline action before the upcoming National Day in October. But no one can be sure what's next. Sending in the tanks remain irrational, but not impossible. With Chinese interference in Taiwan, Tibet, and especially Xinjiang, it serves as a reminder that Beijing is prepared to go far in pursuit of its grand imperial project. I was once the face of Hong Kong's youth activism. In this leaderless movement, my sacrifices are minimal compared to those among us who have been laid off of protesting, who have been injured but too afraid of even going to a hospital, or who have been forced to take their own life, to have each lost an eye. The youngest of the 1,500 arrested so far is only 12 years old schoolboy. I don't know them personally, yet their pain is my pain. We belong to the same community, struggling for our right of self-determination, so we can build one brighter and common future. A child born today will not even have celebrated his or her 28th birthday by 2047, when the 50 years unchanged policy is set to expire. That deadline is closer to us than it appears. There's no return for us. Decades from now, when historians look back, I'm sure that 2019 will turn out to have been a watershed. I hope historians will celebrate the United States Congress for having stood on the side of Hong Kongers, the side of human rights and democracy.